So not only are we seeing people being replaced, but our economic disruption that's coming from AI is going to be bigger than anything we've ever seen. It's going to be this disruption that I don't know that we have a clear path on how we're going to respond.
Tesla is shutting down, or they're discontinuing the Model S and Model X.
RCTF is role, context, task, and format.
The interesting thing about the robots, if you will, is that like today is the worst day that it will be, because tomorrow is going to be infinitely better than today. It just the exponential increase in AI. Today is the worst day, and it'll just continue on. So from that standpoint, it's super interesting.
Okay, that's worst day ever. Today is the worst day ever.
And like worst day, that's really poorly phrased, but
poorly phrased on my part or your part?
No, on my part.
Okay.
It just because I think that what happens is a lot of people will try it, they don't get the outcome that they're necessarily looking for, so then they're like, it's not ready yet, it's too early. But if you compare that to where it was a week ago, a month ago, 2 months ago, I mean, the level of improvement is huge. So you should not, don't use today as a bad experience. If you get an hallucination or something like that as a deterrent not to try it again, continue to try it. You'll be amazed at how quickly it's improving.
And the hallucination might not be the drugs you're taking. It might just be the robot. Got it. Okay. I remember 6 months ago, I was trying this tool, hated it, tried it in a couple of weeks ago, and I was like, oh, this is significantly improved. So just like you said, Tim, it's gotten there. All right. Today we have two guests from the AI Collective Hampton Roads. Shout out Aaron and Andrew from the Robot Collective. How's it going?
Hey guys.
Hello.
Thanks for having us on.
Thanks for joining us.
When we ask people to be guests on the show, we send them this form, a couple of questions. In there's a headshot of it. And I think for the first time ever, I could be wrong on this. I know I look at this form in detail. I'm assuming you do too, Tim. But like I'm looking at these and I'm like, are these both robot generated images?
Yes.
Okay.
I think Andrew gave me the link to the site that does these headshots. So yeah.
Yeah, Nano Banana. Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wow, they're like super crisp. Okay.
Yeah. They're based on real images, right? You upload, other images that you want to use as the template. And then Nano Banana or GPT at this point can create a doctored image of it. They still look, a little bit AI generated, but they're getting better and better, as you guys were just mentioning, and they're going to be indistinguishable from photos very soon.
I mean, are you a suit kind of guy?
Not super often. I mean, tend to be working from home kind of guy. So, if I have a really formal, video presentation I have to do, maybe I'll put on a jacket or something. But I'm from California, where we don't wear a lot of suits, so
I don't even know what a suit is. I don't really own one. Tim knows that very well.
Yes. How many Mac Minis do you guys have? Are you sporting today?
How many what?
Mac Minis. That seems to be all the rage.
You're talking about CloudBot?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I have been a lifelong supporter of every product except for Apple. I have never purchased an Apple product, and I never will purchase an Apple product.
Mm.
Not that I judge people, that use Apple products, but I don't really buy into their ethos, and I don't really need my hand to be held while using technological devices. So it's not really the brand that I'm looking for. But CloudBot in a general sense is very interesting, other than the very imminent and present danger of giving it access to your credit card and allowing it to go wild and spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on stuff that you probably don't need.
Zach, are you privy to, did you see any of the rage that happened over the weekend?
No, but just a quick side note. Whenever someone says they're not judging someone, they're judging someone. Come on. Like we all know that. No, but what happened? Okay, so people are spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on Mac Minis. Like what? Like,
well, I mean, a Mac Mini is like $600, but it's just, I guess it was, to summarize, and Aaron, Andrew, correct me. Feel free to step in. This is more your domain than mine. But there was a pretty big breakthrough in terms of agentic AI, in terms of with this, you set this up and they will act on your behalf in ways that never before that we've been able to do. So essentially you set this up, and the next thing you know, you just let it run. You tell it what you want it to do, and then it just works tirelessly on the task that you want it to do. But that's about the extent. I listened to a podcast this morning about it, and Andrew, to your point, there is certainly some concerns in terms of like you give this bot permissions to do, to act on your behalf, answer emails, but in terms of all of a sudden, if you get an email that says, all right, give me, I need your credit card information or whatever, are there guardrails that are put in place to prevent that from replying back with, yeah, here's my credit card, here's my social security number. Those are the levels of concern that I would have. But,
exactly. Yeah, and those are valid concerns. So, Claudebot and the hype that's been going on the last couple of days is a few different technologies that have been converging and have been popularized, very recently. There's browser use agents, which have been around for around a year, but they haven't been incredibly popular. There's a number of different frameworks. GPT offers their own. There's a few open source offerings. Claude recently launched their own maybe a month ago. And these are AI agents that have the ability to interact with the browser, right? They can navigate to websites. They can make purchases on your behalf, whether it's booking a flight or booking a nanny or whatever it is. And with, again, the advent of another technology within the last year, MCPs, right, which enable very consistent, communication between the LLMs and then the end tools that you want to be accessing and using. These browser-based agents are becoming more and more powerful. And so a lot of the hype in the news for the last couple of days is people realizing this one particular, framework called Claudebot and setting them wild to, run a business for them, or to set up an environment within AWS, or to, buy and sell, things on eBay. And the guardrails, as Tim was mentioning, aren't really mature, to any degree at this point. And most people set it up and have no idea about the permissions that they should be using. And so this AI bot runs wild, buys hundreds of thousands of dollars of, stuff on their behalf in some cases, or sets up a massive AWS environment, the bill of which is, $50,000 a month or something. So they're getting these massive bills and then posting the massive bills on social media, and it's getting a lot of controversy.
Wow.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. So I haven't used Claudebot myself, but I'm always curious to see what the big guys are doing to stay relevant, because like Andrew said, a lot of these technologies have been available but not publicly known. And so like companies like Microsoft using Copilot, or Apple trying to stay in the game with AI and doing Claudebot is interesting to me. I'm curious to see how it'll go. I'm a little bit of I do a little bit of both. I have an iPhone, but I don't really subscribe to a lot of the Apple tools myself. I like to experiment with some of the smaller companies because they seem to be a little bit more innovative than the bigger guys.
Well, be careful when you tell someone like Andrew that you use a tool like Apple.
He's not judging.
No, totally not judging at all. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just interesting. It's being the first out of the gate. I think that it's just super immature at this point. And as quickly as everything is changing, it won't take long before Claudebot is like yesterday's news. And it's just the constant rat race in terms of everyone leapfrogging over one another. It just happens so fast that.
Well, it reminds me of the first days of COVID, when there was a new app on the App Store every single day that was getting this crazy attention. I can think of the video tool that was allowing people to communicate from multiple places at one point. I'm thinking it's Marco Polo, but it's not that. It's something else. And this company did get acquired for 7 figures.
Yeah,
but that's kind of what that's what I hear now. Is like, okay, like this is this is not a long-term solution, but it's something that will get some sort of quick hit. Maybe there's an acqui-hire on there and a company acquires that talent, something like that. That's where I see a lot of the robot businesses going, is just like, okay, like who is good at this? Who's a bigger company that's willing to invest in those style of talent, and go from there.
Certainly, it depends on if the company is more of a GPT wrapper or something truly novel. A lot of these companies that are GPT wrappers, in that they don't have any novel technology of their own, they're just using one of the LLMs on the back end, via API calls. And those companies, the functionality that they're developing usually gets rolled into the native LLMs by GPT and Gemini and Claude and the other teams. And then the value of those companies goes down. And this is pretty commonplace. It's probably 80+% of all of the AI related startups fall under that GPT wrapper kind of umbrella.
Do you think that do you think that AI is going to take over the majority of human jobs? Where do you see that landscape going? Is the human race going to be completely overtaken by some sort of robot? And how long will that take to be there if possible?
I could talk about this for hours, so maybe I'll
we talk about this all the time in the AI Collective. We actually held like a town hall last year where we talked about like the ethical impacts of AI. And I know this is a near and dear topic to Andrew because we talk about it. So I'll just start off by saying, like, I'm pretty sure that there are going to be, at least in my mind, there are two major impacts. One, the direct replacement of workers. And we're already seeing that happen. And it's not just in tech, but it's in any place where tech is applied. So in the past, 5 years, most companies, a lot of companies have become tech companies. Healthcare companies are tech companies. Transportation and logistic companies are tech companies. So these places are going to see major impacts of actual people being replaced. And there's a lot of, back and forth on a person like a technical program manager with AI is going to be more, valuable than a person that doesn't have those skill sets. So there will be spaces where those jobs will still exist, but they're going to have tool belts with AI included. And then there's the other impact too, which is we're seeing a mass amount of layoff across multiple industries faster than we've ever seen in the history of employment. So not only are we seeing people being replaced, but our economic disruption that's coming from AI is going to be bigger than anything we've ever seen. So sure, we're going to replace people with robots, but then, okay, so you get a job where you know how to manage robots. That's just not going to be that simple. It's going to be this disruption that I don't know that we have a clear path on how we're going to respond. I have my own opinions on how we should respond, but those two paths I see are going to be the biggest impact.
Andrew, you care to elaborate?
Sure. Yeah. So there's a lot of different ways that we could take this, and maybe addressing the job impact. There, as Aaron was saying, there is job impact right now, right? This is not a thing that is coming in the future. This is a very present and has been going on through, early to mid 2025, and will continue at an accelerated pace going forward. And it's just that many human roles can essentially be summated to being busy work for the most part, which is what AI is incredibly adept at replacing, or search data compression type work, sifting through large quantities of data. These type of things AI is very, very good at right now and replacing people. So some, junior data science roles, some junior development roles, all of these are eminently replaceable. Many of the companies that I've spoken with, they no longer hire junior data science and junior developer roles, not just in the US where we see a lot of this, but across the world, including, many of the outsourced, Indian software development type centers where they would have 1,000, 2,000 employees and be hiring, these type of junior engineers daily. They no longer do that for the ones that I've been speaking with. And so that wave of displacement and then subsequent need for retraining and everything is a very real and imminent threat. And then there is the acceleration of AI, the release of robots, as you guys have been calling it, right? But in a very, physical, tangible sense, the release of humanoid robots. So those allow for the replacement of not just cognitive labor, but also physical labor, right? Will we need a house painter? Will we need a power washer? Will we need a car washer in a couple of years from now? The answer is likely not. But again, that is up for debate. Personally, with the technological acceleration that we've been seeing and some of the things that Tim's been alluding to, as the technological progress is increasing, it seems less and less likely that we will need the majority of simple to moderately complex physical labor jobs within the next maybe 10 years or so.
Yeah, me personally, I'm super excited. Like I will be the first one to get my Optimus, and I will have that day one, and that will, amongst other things, I'm looking forward to like just walking the neighborhood with Optimus,
Yeah.
riding in the car with Optimus. But if you think about that from a sense of as people age, to have an Optimus in the house with you to care for you, you will have like a no cost person to watch over you, ensure that your medication is being taken in the right amounts at the right time. If you fall, like it's able to see that. If you have a child, Optimus can watch your child sleep. If there's any abnormalities, then they know what to do from that standpoint. So from that I'm super excited and optimistic from that standpoint. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Patient Zero Timothy Ryan, ladies and gentlemen. Here he is, ready for it. He was ready when he saw it in Rocky 2 or 3. It didn't happen like the way that he wanted. He wanted the Jetsons to come in, or what's his name? Something McFly. Marty McFly. Yeah. He's waiting for all these things. Here we are, 40 years later. Tim, the world is your oyster. Congratulations, you're Optimus. What are you going to name Optimus? Are you going to name it?
I don't know. Yeah, we've been talking about that, but I think this just, I don't know. We have not figured that out yet. But
okay.
I mean,
like be a remote city. That would be very difficult if something happens where, like Cheyenne, Wyoming. Like what happens when Cheyenne is lost in the desert? You can't get away. That's if you end up naming your robot Cheyenne. I'll be excited.
I don't know. It will be. Even so, like the breaking news that happened last night at Tesla's earnings report is that Tesla is shutting down or they're discontinuing the Model S and Model X, and like that, those are the two flagship vehicles that's what got Tesla started. But they're making room. They're using that to build Optimus, and in order for them to make room in the factory to build them at scale, it's like that to me is a super, super bold move in terms of talk about a company that is just focused on the future and focused on AI and robotics. they are just moving forward. That has to be a very difficult decision for them to discontinue those two models, but to make room for Optimus. And a lot of people say, or not a lot of people, but some people say that in 10, 20 years time, that people will forget that Tesla started by making cars, that they're just going to be known for humanoid robots.
It won't be that soon, but a century later.
It could be soon. I think the thing that maybe people don't realize if they're not steeped in the tech space too, is that the correlation between the growth of AI and robotics are so directly linked. I know that people might remember when driverless cars started to get a lot of popularity. And if you've been to San Francisco, you might even had a chance to ride in one. Totally autonomous vehicles, taxis. And they were just kind of a little weird. We have this expectation of robots to be perfect, which is fair. So they weren't perfect when they first started, but a lot of that is impacted by the compute power and the speed of our AI. And so I think that's kind of like the undertone or the under story of this whole sort of like growth that we're seeing in robotics is that the compute power is insanely fast. Like even in the last 5 years, I used to have to rent a supercomputer at school to just do like a small simulation, and it would take me 48 hours. That now I can do within a few minutes on my like local laptop. So that speed in which we're able to run this, like these different AI models, including LLMs, but all sorts of different models, plus the availability of compute power, is really changing the robotics scene. So I'm not surprised that we're seeing a ton of investment in actual robotics. And I would just say to people who are maybe like learning about that field is that what we've seen in the past like 5 years, it's going to be far more exponential growth in their ability to do the thing that they're trying to do, whatever the robot's trying to do.
I mean, it's here. That's the crazy thing. So like, I can look on my vehicle now, and I drive autonomously 99% of the time. So that is a figure that is tracked now. Like even to the point, it's just mind-boggling now that like if I go into a parking garage, it will navigate into the parking garage. It stops at the ticket booth. It can detect when I take the ticket. And then as soon as I take the ticket, then it waits for the arm to go up and then it proceeds through. I mean, it's just bananas that's and then it will navigate through the parking garage and then park itself in the parking garage. I mean, that's just, it is accelerating.
Don't you miss driving?
No. No.
I won't miss it.
Yep.
We're at this time where, I know me growing up, the big three, big four kind of TV stations were like ABC, CBS, Fox, NBC. I don't know if I missed one of those, ABC. And now it's kind of like it's generally known that like, okay, people are consuming like a YouTube or a Netflix or an Instagram from a content perspective. In that same kind of vein where people before, this is where I consumed content, to now I consume content over here. And it took a while. You guys, I would say, are like the OGs of those old networks. You guys are like the ABCs, the NBCs, the Foxes of the world from before. But you're in this on these new tools that are coming in from the robot perspective. Like, how do you navigate and get those people to start creating these new tools, to start getting into it, to start realizing that, okay, like this is here, this is the future. So it is something that you can consume, and if not, you're probably going to fail and just let it all take over. Like, what are your words of wisdom to get people to start adopting, as you guys are the old broadcast network things of the robot world?
Are you asking how we get people in our local like 757 area to start?
In general, I would assume
AI?
it's the same. I would assume it's the same thing, whether it's here or somewhere else in the world.
Yeah, I was just asking whether we're trying to maintain a focus for, our local area, since we're all in the 757, and that's where the focus of the AI collective, our chapter, is at least. But
sure, we can do here.
Sure. I mean, I think we have a pretty concrete plan for the next year and even going beyond 2026 for the type of course offerings and evangelism of things related to technology and AI. Right, we're putting on 46 events this year of a variety of different content, some of which is, tools and technologies. So teaching people how to create the agents and like browser-based agents like we were talking about before. Some of it is probably going to be related to robotics that I think Aaron might lead, in a couple months here. We're doing hackathons to get direct involvement and the, articulation and, building of the ideas that people are having. So they're actively engaging in that creative process using the things that we're teaching and evangelizing in some of the more informational type sessions. And then those are culminating in like these competitive hackathons and the tech summit, where we're going to have another hackathon as well. And I think collectively, like all of that leads to, setting a good foundation, which is the knowledge about the things that are going on, the social community, so you can find people to build with and collaborate, because building things together is, almost always going to be more effective than trying to build them on your own. And 3, like setting a good stage for these people to collaboratively work together in pursuit of a higher goal, whether that is, winning prizes or competing against, fellow peers and doing networking and things like that at many of the events that we're going to be running.
What's the goal behind the AI Collective?
Yeah.
The global org or our local?
Both.
You want to take it, Aaron?
Yes. Okay. This is a topic that's probably my favorite topic, which is like why are we doing what we're doing? And it's funny because we started before we actually combined with the global AI Collective. And so what that is, AI Collective is a group of people across the entire globe. They have chapters in almost every major city in the United States to every other country. So like really the entire globe. And these chapters, the point of it and why we joined and what we were trying to do when we first started, like the 4 of us coming together and then joining the AI Collective Hampton Roads is trying to bring, like, this is a little sales pitchy and cheesy, but it's so true. We're trying to bring the AI side, the human side to the AI world. And what that looks like for me personally is like, why are we trying to create these spaces for people to get access and lower barriers for different types of communities to learn and participate in this sort of tech revolution? Is that's going to be, I think, the direct way that we deal with a lot of these ethical questions is instead of keeping this information to these smaller communities that haven't had a lot of representation of other communities, we want to make it accessible to everyone in our community. And so our main focus is really doing something in person. So while we do have digital content and we all like work remote and are very comfortable with being on the internet and the digital world, our main focus is creating community space where we physically meet in person. We work on projects together. I can't remember who talked about like creating space for spontaneous connections being like a major source of innovation. So that's really what we're trying to do, at least with the AI Collective Hampton Roads, but definitely that's the ethos behind the AI Collective global org as well. But yeah, creating a space where people can have access to this information.
So making sure humans.
Yeah, I'm just curious. What steps did you have to take to get the local chapter? Did you have to apply? Did you have to meet a certain threshold? Yeah, how did that go about?
Okay, I'll pass this to Andrew because he's actually helping start local chapters across the United States. I think like Detroit has contacted him. A few different representatives from Canada have worked with him to start chapters. So he knows the actual tactical information. But what I will say is like, shout out to Hampton Road. The AI Collective Global wanted to work with us. So we're doing something really good here. It was really easy for us to join their chapter. In fact, Ted is one of the regional representatives for the Global AI Collective for our region. So it was very easy for us. But Andrew actually knows the tactical information on how to start a chapter too.
I fear Aaron may have oversold my knowledge a little bit. So I have worked with a number of people around the globe, which are mostly my business partners, giving them knowledge about the AI Collective in a general sense, and then hooking them up with individuals within the global AI Collective org to get the ball rolling. The process, as far as I understand it, is to essentially just fill out an application form, which almost no one is rejected, and then to go through like a 4-week onboarding and training course, at which point you'll get your charter. I believe the AI Collective gives a nominal amount of money along with a bank account and some initial support for setting up those chapters, and then you're essentially free to create your own events and to market them. You get access to a platform called Luma, which is the predominant event platform for the AI Collective. And then you can, start doing your own thing.
And then how often do you have these events? Do you have to be a technical person to attend? Can anybody show up to this? To people that want to learn more about AI, is that it's just a place for them? How do you get involved?
Yeah, so we intentionally run a number of different types of events. So our organization has really been around, the local 757 organization has only been around for about 7 or 8 months running events with any consistency. And so we're very much still in the exploration phase for seeing what types of audiences there are in the 757 and then trying to put out content that resonates well with them. We think we're getting to do a better job at it because the events that we've been putting on have been getting more and more viewership, culminating in the event that we did in December, which had, I think, 74 people actually show up and 120 or so register. So the events are getting larger and larger. And in the effort to meet the needs of the local area, we're testing a number of different formats for the content that we deliver, right? So I think I mentioned this before a little bit, but we try and do a tool and or technology presentation on a monthly basis. So that is a particular, tool. It could be ChatGPT and like cool things you could do with it, or it could be teaching Agentic AI, a technology. Then we have an industry-based one, right? So the one we did in December that I was mentioning was AI for startups. And we have a bunch of others that we've done: AI in medicine, AI in finance, AI in marketing, so on and so forth. So an industry-related event to see if there's crossover within those particular industries in the 757. Then we do a digital event, which is really, for the most part, me rehashing a previous event that we've done, but there's a lot of plans for future digital events and then uploading those to our YouTube channel. And then we do a social event. So the social event is actually this evening at Wegmans. We're testing Wegmans as an area because many of the other meetup groups in the area are actually using Wegmans, the cafeteria area, as a meetup spot. And there's, food and beverages and all that fun stuff to make it a really convenient place for people to hang out.
What time is that tonight?
6:30, I think. I can check my phone real quick, but I'm pretty sure it's 6:30.
Yeah.
I'll be across the street at the Hive. Maybe I'll swing by.
Yeah, it is at 6:30. Yeah.
And I'll add on too, I think to your original question, we really do invite people from every different level of understanding in regards to technology to our events. So I would say, like, even some of our more technical workshops, we've had people who are just like brand new to that space. And I think the presenters do a really good job, at least in the last 7 months. I've seen them give resources for people who are like visual learners or people who are brand new to the space, all the way up to like if you're a software engineer and you want to be able to see the back end code of how these agents were created. That was kind of similar to what we presented with the Crew AI workshop. We do have a wide variety. So even if you're brand new to this space, I would still encourage you to come out because you'll probably pick up different methods for you to get started, even like brand new. And I think that's really also what we try to do, the four of us, when we're recruiting speakers, is make sure that we create a space where like every level of understanding is welcome. And then, yeah, if you're not getting everything in that presentation, how can you get started? What is a good level? Like oftentimes me or Ted or Andrew will step aside with people who have specific questions after those events, and we can help people that way too.
Yeah. And to piggyback on what Aaron said, we have actual demographics based on the questions that we've asked the people that attend. And it's really kind of like an 80-20 split. About 20% of our total audience, which is almost 1,000 people at this point, are technologists. They are, cybersecurity people, they're, cloud, they're, whatever. They work in the tech space and they are technical in nature. But that is a relatively small portion of the overall demographic. The majority, the 80%, are people who are non-technical to semi-technical. And these are the people that they might have been the first people to start using ChatGPT at their office, and then they became the ChatGPT guy or girl. And then they come to these because there's a lot of expectation built up on them at their workplace, and they want to connect with other people that are dealing with similar things. And so a lot of these people will show up and have a bunch of questions about how to better use it. So then when people at their workplace ask them, oh, how do I use ChatGPT to do X, they have a good response. And so, if you're a part of that 80%, right, you're in the majority, and we try and tailor the content of what we do and deliver to, again, the majority, while still, providing some interesting tidbits for like the very hardcore technological folks.
For those 80%, I would assume a lot of it is around improvement of prompting and how to get better at some of that stuff. Are there some tips, tricks on things that individuals can do to improve their prompting skills so that they can get the result they want sooner rather than later?
Yeah, absolutely. Did you want to take this one, Aaron, or do you want me to?
No, I was thinking you can, because I actually at the event with AI and startups, there was a really good section. Andrew led that talk in partnership with Charlie from 757 Collab, and they had a really good breakdown of like a beginner's way to start using prompts in a more like user-friendly way. So I'm going to pass it to you because I love that presentation.
Okay. Yeah. So there is a prompting framework. It is called RCTF. So RCTF is role, context, task, and format. So if you are talking to Claude, you're planning a software development project, right? The role that you give the prompt is act as a Python developer, as a C# developer, whatever coding language you're going to use. And then the context you give it is, I need a web app that, tracks business analytics and sends, emails for me. So it, calls AI on the back end. It generates the email templates that I need to use, and then fills in the details from the memory storage that I am providing access to. And the task is, to write the actual program, do the architecture, create the PRD, the product development document, and then to build that into a checklist for the LLM to continue to follow as it's developing this piece of software. And then the format, the F part, is to, output it's providing a framework for what the output should look like, right? So you need to tell it the output of this project should be a functional web app. Here is the domain that I would like you to use. Here's the related, secrets and other things that should be incorporated. And so the output should be a functional web app that I can either, load into my phone or onto my browser and begin testing, right? So you use that RCTF framework, and it applies to nearly every situation or use case that you'll need to use an LLM for.
And I was going to say, for the non-technical folks, you can probably do the same thing. If you're an event planner, I want you to act as an event planner. This is the type of event. And then the same deal, not necessarily writing code per se, correct?
Correct,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Very cool. You gonna give Alan his love, Zach?
Oh, sure. Alan Hagerman, also known as DJAH, aka Alan in a onesie. If context there, since everyone wants to know, is that Alan sometimes will dress up at a tech event in a onesie, blasted out in like, what would you call that? Like code graffiti?
Yeah. Some street
I've only
art.
ever seen him in
He
his
also has like, okay, sequins. I've never seen that. Probably don't want to either. I think he has like a Kangol style hat, maybe some shades with no lenses in them. He's got his little cigar pipe going on. Like
Party rock
He's
anthem.
got the cane. He's got the cane. Yes,
I haven't seen that, but I really want to.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? Don't you worry. I could probably pull it up if we really want to, but that's I gotta log into a certain account for that. Anyway, so Alan says, with so many AI tools out there and more being released daily, how do you select the tools to use for what need?
Yeah. To best serve your need. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's a great question, and one that
he's a DJ. Sorry, he's good at pressing play.
Yeah, it's a question that I hear all the time, both at our events and then just people that I talk to, doing consulting or just friends or whatever, right? So there are tons and tons of AI tools that come out all the time. And it's very easy to get shiny object syndrome, right? It's something that, human beings are very, prone to do. And so I would just try and narrow your focus to the specific use case and articulate the use case that you're actually trying to complete. So, last night I was talking to a few business owners at the cybersecurity meetup that I mentioned earlier, and they were very interested in lead generation. And so we were talking about lead generation tools specifically, which had AI components. And they had tried a bunch of different things and started creating their own tools to start using for this type of outreach as well. And so we talked about, scoping that down to what particularly they wanted to do, the quantity of, outreach that they wanted to do. And then we scoped that down to a particular tool that could help them do that. In this case, it was like Smart Lead for doing cold email outreach, and then something like Meet Alfred to do LinkedIn-based cold outreach, because those tools are very high quality and vetted and cost effective for the type of purpose that they want to be used for. So, broadening that scope down to the very specific use case is incredibly important to help narrow your focus of which tools are going to be appropriate for, the job that you're actually trying to accomplish.
Yeah, I would add too, this is like a very engineering technical approach, but I was able to give a presentation for the Women in Tech conference in Richmond. And I swear this was the most appreciated part of the whole presentation, was just basically how to do that assessment of, in a sense, it's AI modernization, but for either on a personal level or maybe it is for your company. You have a system and you have these areas in which you want to improve it. You know that there are a bunch of AI tools out there. How do you know when to switch? Or how do you know, what's the ROI on switching and which one do you use? So for me, I like to suggest a really a simple framework that I used a lot as a technical program manager, which is to make your dream list of all of the things that you want to do. In Andrew's example, it was outreach or advertising, cold calling clients. Maybe you're working in an administrative role and you have you think about what you do on a week. What do you spend a lot of your time doing? Maybe it's a personal thing. Maybe you're, a mom and you have a lot of time management things that you have to do to get your kids to different places, to different sports and school events. Whatever you do, make that list. And then use sort of it's almost analogous to a risk assessment, where you have one column, which is how impactful or important is this to you and your life? And you have one column, which is how easy would it be to to use an AI tool, to implement an AI tool, to learn a new tool? And these are relative, right? It's okay if these numbers are just made up. The point is they're relative to you. That'll help you narrow down the projects. And then I would use a project-based decision-making framework where based on your project, that's what's going to drive you to learn a new tool. Unless you find you have a lot of passion and you love finding new tools and you love to try new things, that's a whole different world. But if you're just trying to figure out how do I stay relevant? What tools do I learn? When do I switch from one system to a new AI tool? I would say have it be driven by the projects that you want to accomplish, because learning a brand new tool for the sake of it takes a special mindset. But if you can accomplish something with that new tool, it's going to really stick and you're going to have a lot of an easier time learning that new tool, I think.
Okay, it took me a second, but I did find it. And I know the world is wondering what exactly is the person who you're talking about look like. This is the person who asked this question, and his name is Alan, and this is a video of him
very nice
at the Startup World Cup Virginia Qualifier 2025. Well, maybe there is some actual lenses in the glasses, but they're probably just glass. So thank you, Alan, for the question. Great answer from both of you.
I like the gold chains.
Yeah.
It's a nice touch.
Didn't even notice that until just now.
The Run DMC type of effect going on there.
Yeah, totally.
And to close out his comments, he thinks that he needs to upgrade his wardrobe choices.
I
That's a
think it's
personal
perfect.
thing.
I don't want Alan ever to change.
Yeah, stay you, Alan. Stay you. Are you? Do you guys consider yourselves early adopters? Like, are you? I mean, Tim just told you. You know, he's clearly an early adopter. Like, are you guys just early adopters on things AI related? Like, how do you? What are your thoughts on that? Like, have you guys always been like that? Like, what is it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've been using AI for 12 years, like machine learning and, data science for 12 years. And started using GPT when it came out in beta. And then I already have one of my robots pre-ordered. So I think I'm about as early of an early adopter as you can be.
Is your robot ordered, Tim?
They have Optimus has not been. That's not available for
Cheyenne, you mean? Got it.
Yeah.
He's ready though. I would say I'm probably an early adopter. I'm maybe aligned with like the classic nerd, alignment there. I started school later in life. So 2017 is when I went back to college. Prior to that, I was working at a law firm, totally different, but systems organization. And I got my degree in systems engineering, and my focus was on AI and machine learning. And so it was a little bit different back then, because a lot of the models that we were learning how to use and a lot of focus of my school was figuring out how these models were designed, and then how to implement them in both simulation, optimization, and robotics. LLMs were just starting to get popular at that time. And my experience was like really deeply ingrained in understanding the backend, like the math and design of these different technologies. But then when I graduated in 2020, which was a crazy time to graduate with a degree in systems engineering and focus on AI, I went directly into Microsoft. And so being able to apply all of that became far more fascinating to me than the actual design. And to be fair, the math that is required to continue designing these models is so far beyond my own personal understanding. That's a very brilliant space that is very respectable, but not for me anymore. So now I would say I'm definitely an early adopter, but my main focus is like the application and the use cases of these tools. Being able to experiment with them with the context of like, how can this make people's lives better, and how can we like implement this in like a way that makes sense. So yeah, I'm definitely a nerd and an early adopter, and I love learning about new tools. I definitely get the shiny object syndrome or FOMO, like, oh, I got to learn this new tool. But I've always thought it was a fascinating space.
As fast as everything's moving today, what is the one AI tool that you could not live without?
Probably Claude. I think I use Claude more than anything else. Claude just has, I mean, it's a great, LLM in terms of the, quality and output, both for a lot of the business use cases that I use it for, and then also for a lot of the development use cases that I use it for. Claude Code is great. Its access to tools is phenomenal. And it's a pretty, open, extensive, framework and, usable tool for, again, many different use cases that I end up using it for 4, 6, 8, 10 hours some days.
Yeah, I have to say LLMs, like I use ChatGPT and Claude. I just was original OG ChatGPT, but I do think Claude is better. So I just have to actually transition to Claude. I know there's a lot more opportunity for being able to modify it and use it in very specific ways that are super useful. But yeah, I use LLMs daily. I think it's probably the most useful tool.
One thing that I was not privy to this information before, but I had listened to a podcast. I think it was from an individual on The Diary of a CEO. The guy called himself like the grandfather of the OG of AI. And he prefaced it basically saying that the AI will be ready for humankind to be gone by like 2017, like fully adopted. That doesn't mean that it could be doing that. Doesn't mean that it will be fully adopted, but it'll be strong enough to do that. And then like 15 years from that, something crazier and stuff like that. And then he was talking about how this is a virus, I believe, and how we've gotten so far from you like how I'm prefacing this to like that the robots have taken over so much that we're so close to an on-off switch to be able to turn it off that it's a really scary thing. What I'm getting at is the safety of AI, the safety of robots, the safety of like what we're allowing this thing to do, kind of like the bot that's buying all these things earlier that you're talking about. Like I heard a stat from 757 Collab Charlie that says of every dollar that's spent on AI, 3% is spent on the safety of it. Are we thinking about safety when developing these tools, and is it going to end up screwing us in the long end? Like how are we looking at that kind of stuff? I know I saw in some of your collateral that safety is a really important thing, but like, is that even happening on the tools that we're using on a daily basis? And what's the future of mankind's safety in general looking like?
What a can of worms. How much time do we have?
As long as you want.
Yeah, glad you brought that up at the end. Yeah.
It's a really good topic. Okay, so there's safety, which is an interesting idea because we're talking about tools that are being made by corporations. And so how do we regulate safety, within the United States and globally? That's a really good question. How do we can even look at historically the data governance laws in the United States, maybe compared to Europe, and the total difference of having laws and then no laws. But then, and you're talking about like safety on a tool level. You're also talking about the idea of the exponential growth of the intelligence level of AI, which you kind of touched on, but that is a very interesting topic as well. And then we're thinking about how safety, like how this is all incorporating every like human experience of safety with AI and what's that going to look like in the future. So there's a lot of can of worms. I just wanted to call them out, but I'm actually going to pass it to Andrew because we do talk about this a lot. This is a very interesting subject. But yeah, how do you think about safety and how we're building out AI?
Yeah, so we should probably separate, two concepts here because the answers for them are very different, right? One is AI safety in terms of like how AI is being used now and will be used in the relatively near future. And then there's AI safety, which is really AGI safety and whether or not we're going to bring about the extinction of the human race. So the first AI safety, right, is making sure that people are not leaving like unsecure webhooks, making sure that people are treating, agents like AI agents, like we talked about before, as something akin to a human being in that they need guardrails, they need access management, they need fundamental cybersecurity principles like least privilege, which govern the access that these tools can have, right? So then you have fewer and fewer incidents, whether those incidents are just overspending or an agent going rogue and like hacking a system or something like that, right? So there's a lot of work being done in the functional security aspect by many, many cybersecurity companies to regulate and provide open source frameworks or, paid tools that helps with the specific, safety protocols and safe usage of AI across, industries, right? That is something that there's billions of dollars being poured into right now. And that's actually something that I think that we are doing a very good job in keeping up in relative terms. The other one is AGI and whether or not we're bringing about the apocalypse. And due to the geopolitical factors involved, right, the tech race between US and China, we're essentially trying to develop AGI, artificial general intelligence, which is an AI system that is as broadly capable as a human being. we're trying to develop it as quickly as possible. And the reason why that is potentially a bad thing, right, is because these AGI, independent conscious entities would have their own goals. Those goals would be fundamentally misaligned with the goals of humanity. Maybe not initially, but at a certain threshold, right? When we're competing directly with resources, right? Whether those resources are compute or land space throughout the world, or heavy metals for building additional hardware, or whatever it is, right? We will eventually come into conflict, and at which point these autonomous digital entities, which likely at that point will have the ability to self-improve, right? They'll start with an IQ of 150, and then within an hour or a minute or a picosecond, right, we'll have an IQ of 200, and then 1,000, and then 10,000, then a million. And it will replicate itself across all of the digital systems across the world, because there's many, many insecure devices out there, like IoT, Internet of Things devices. And at which point, the only thing that could wipe an AGI entity that's disseminated itself would be a Carrington event. You brought up the light switch, on and off switch before, but an entity like what we're describing, there is no on-off switch for. There's no virus that could effectively take it out, right? You would need a Carrington event, which is a massive solar flare that would send us back to, like 1800s technology worldwide to be able to deal with something like that. So it's, a pretty big can of worms that you opened up, right before the end of the show. But it is kind of fun to talk about if you're interested.
So you're saying there's a chance?
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, I'm an eternal optimist, and all of this information is really real. Like, we're facing it today. But I am an eternal optimist, and the one thing that makes me hopeful is this space is completely uncharted territory. So even what Andrew's talking about the proportion, like comparing the proportion of something with an IQ that high to something that low, like say like our IQ compared to that of an ant, and how do we treat ants? To say that AI is going to treat us like ants is terrifying, right? But we don't know. There's a lot of unknown in that space. And so that's what I hold on to, is the fact that we don't know makes me optimistic that there could be something that could happen. We don't know yet.
Right. An Ants World season 4 coming next.
Yeah.
Are we living in a simulation?
The probability of it is high. If you want to take it to math terms, the probability we're living in a simulation, if you make some pretty grand assumptions, there's a really cool math proof that shows that it's a pretty high probability.
And what does that mean if we are? Like, what is a simulation?
Ooh, Andrew, do you want to take it?
Well, sure. I mean, it depends. I think a lot of people talk about simulations, and a lot of people talk about like holographic theory and things like that and conflate them. I personally don't buy into simulation theory, nor some of the claims like people like Elon Musk would make, that the chance that we're in a simulation is like, 99% or higher. So, there's also plenty of mathematical modeling. Are you guys familiar with Laplace's demon?
Yeah, that's a great theory. I love that one. Good mental
I was going to say the same thing. I agree.
Yeah. So Laplace's demon, right, is a demon in that it's someone that can understand and compute the action and location and knowledge about everything that exists in the entire universe, and therefore, lends to determinism, or like the view of determinism, which, kind of to some degree fundamentally conflicts with quantum mechanics. But it essentially would lead to then the idea that in order to simulate a universe like ours, we would need even more energy and computation than currently exists in our entire universe to properly model it. So it is unlikely that that's a realistic thing, unless one of the base layer universes that exist that is doing the modeling of us just has dramatically, unrestrained resources and, essentially near infinite, compute and resources and all of those things, right? And so that simulating a universe as simple as ours in relative terms is just, commonplace for them, right?
It is just wild to
Demon theory.
think how little we really know. How much we know, but yet how little we really, really know.
Yeah.
And how little quantum physics has progressed in, 80, 100 years, something like that.
Isn't that wild?
It's very possible, but that the ants are actually running this world.
Sure.
Maybe.
Yeah. Or
They will
aliens.
be the ones with the last laugh.
Oh man.
Well, as long as Will Smith is here, we still have him to protect us. So we'll be just fine if the aliens are coming.
Will Smith's our savior, definitely.
Yeah.
All right, so the AI collective mothership, they want to come to Hampton Roads because you all are doing such a bang up job. And one of the requirements that they have for you is when we come to visit, we want to enjoy the finest local cuisine that represents the region. What is going to be served at that meal?
I would take them to Heritage.
Ooh, I haven't been there. Why
Yeah,
Heritage?
It's really good. They have
Ugh.
amazing food. They have like a 3-pound tomahawk steak. They have a massive drink menu with just about everything you can have, whether you like fun cocktails or you like aged 20-year whiskey. And I mean, it's like the go-to that my wife and I go to for like all of our events and stuff. So just my vote.
I don't even know if I can add because I'm almost like 6 months pregnant. So the pregnancy, like I get orders from baby on what to eat and I just follow those orders. So I would say Mexican food has been high on my absolutely like go-to food around here. I would also say I wish there were more breakfast burritos, but there are some really, really good biscuit breakfast joints around here. I can't remember the name, but there's one that's in
the
Ghent.
Handsome Biscuit.
Yeah, the Handsome Biscuit is so decadent. Like, don't look at the calories. This is not a time to look at calories when you go there. Okay, just get a biscuit.
Yeah.
So good.
It's a sweet potato at the Handsome Biscuit. They also got the bee in the biscuit, and then you got the ham biscuit from the Smithfield biscuits. Soon will be the Nathan's biscuits, but we'll see.
This man knows his biscuits.
Yeah, I'm from Seattle. They don't know what biscuits are out there. Like down here in Virginia,
that's because it's so sad out there.
Yeah.
Is a breakfast burrito a West Coast thing?
Yeah, there's a lot of places you could drive up, like drive through breakfast burritos in California and Washington. I just miss that. Like
I always wondered why they did not have that here. That should be totally a thing.
Yeah.
So
they have the components, but not the tortillas. What you're telling me. So what we need to do is just
part of it. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so then so you got to have.
And it's
you gotta
more
have
so
someone with the talent to be able to put together said tortilla, homemade, put on the flat top, then put contents in. Okay, that's the key. We don't have that here. We're a little far away.
They might, but I don't know. And if anyone wants to let me know their favorite breakfast burrito joint.
There are a few, but they're not. They don't really hold a candle to the SoCal breakfast burritos.
Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense. Tim, you seem like a guy that would consume on a regular basis a breakfast burrito.
I do. We make them on the weekends quite a bit. Yeah.
Okay.
A dig.
Homemade tortilla?
No, we're not that fancy, but I like a good breakfast burrito in the morning.
I happen to have some tortillas at my house. I don't have home fries, but I probably have all the other components. But I might take you up on that and do one of those this weekend as well. Any final words? People watching, interested in the robots, becoming active in the AI collective community? How can they get involved? Stuff like that.
Yeah, I definitely am going to put out a plug for anyone who is interested. If you haven't been to our events, come to our events. Check us out. We're really friendly, really nice. A lot of really interesting content to learn about. But also, once you kind of see what we're up to, if this is a space where you want to get involved, we are actively looking for volunteers. So right now I'm acting as the volunteer coordinator. It's not something I've ever done before, but it's desperately needed because, like Andrew said, we have over 50 events planned this year, and that's just events we are running, but we're also partnering with a ton of other groups in the space. We're doing hackathons, we're planning a summit. So we need volunteers. And if you're interested in that, please connect with me. I would love to connect you to the space that you want to contribute, whether it's like a one-off, hour-long, I can show up for this hour and help here, or you want to take more of like a leadership role and there's a space that you're like, I know social media, or I know event planning, or I know how to do XYZ and I want to contribute that skill. We would love to work with you. So please hit me up and join us.
Yeah, to piggyback on that, it does look really good on resumes to say, oh yeah, I'm a social media lead for the largest AI group in the entire world. So if you're, thinking about volunteering, there is, personal benefit to be gained too. So, but yeah, do please come out to the events. We try and put on topics that the community is interested in, and many of them are for that 80% that we mentioned before, right? The semi-technical to non-technical people. So don't be daunted by, tech talk or anything. Or if you don't want to sit in front of a presentation, come to a social event like this evening at 6:30 at Wegmans in Town Center. So,
and we have breaking news. Now, this is a little bit of a difficult pull for some because they don't have access to this place. But if you have a military credential, I don't know what that's called, but you can go on a certain base. There is a place called the Coop VA. You can go to see them at thecoopva.com. That's a period COM, the Coop VA. Apparently, they have the best breakfast burritos in town. Check them out. And if you are unable to get on said base, find someone who can and pay them $2 to go on base and bring it out.
Yeah, I'm a military spouse. I'll take you. I'm going this weekend. So,
all right.
Have you had it before, Aaron?
What was that?
Have you had that before? Had the Coop?
No, but I love it. I'm gonna go. I've never been, but it's you said breakfast burrito, so I'm in.
Yeah, the pictures they have on there are great.
We're going to throw an event called Breakfast Burrito, so make sure you come.
That's right. Next hackathon, we're going to create a robot to make the best breakfast burritos in Hampton Roads.
We need to get the Coop to sponsor the AI Collective to deliver breakfast burritos to our events. That's what we need to do.
Okay, yeah. I'm going to work on it. I'll be there so often. We'll
yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Aaron Andrews.
Yeah. No, thanks, Tim.
Thanks. No, appreciate your time. It's been a fun. This might be the longest episode we've had. It has been a fun hour and 9 minutes.
Yeah, it's been great. Enjoyed chatting with you guys.
Yeah.
Toodles.